Welcome to this session entitled How to Share an Idea Worth Spreading, all about TEDx Talks. Dr. Manal Fakhoury is a current member of Toastmasters District 84, and she has expanded her leadership and speaking expertise across multiple arenas. She's been selected as a TEDx speaker 3 times and has also served as a curator and organizer for TEDx for 9 years, including mentoring several other organizers. So let's find out how she does it. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Manal Fakhoury.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to have this opportunity to share with all of you. And let me say that this summit is an idea worth spreading. So congratulations to all of you that had this vision, have put in the effort, and have organized this. So I'm curious to know how many of you in the room are TEDx fanatics, enthusiasts, and are very excited about the world of TED. Okay, so I see a few hands, and I would say that's how I would describe myself. I think for me, the very first time I even heard about TED, it was on the radio. I was listening to a talk and I thought this was exciting and interesting. And then as I started to share with my friends, I'd say, have you heard of TED Talks? And generally people would start out by saying no. And then if you spoke just a little bit longer, then people understood what you were speaking about. And the one, before I really delve into speaking about my topic of how to rock your TED Talk, I want to just offer that any goal any of you have, so perhaps there's a few of you in the room that are interested in delivering a TED Talk, or even, and to be clear, a TEDx Talk. So I'll clarify the difference between the two. But any goal that you have, and let's say it's a keystone goal, and this is something I learned years ago. So a keystone goal is a goal that is so high that it will support many of your other goals. One thing the coach that taught me this said, Manal, do you have at least 3 people in your phone that you can contact right now? Let's say in my case, it was to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And then I thought, wow, like who do I know in my phone that I can call and get the insider's view? And then when it came to TED Talks, I decided that I definitely wanted, and it was a goal for me to give an idea worth spreading. But before I did that, I really wanted to learn further. And that is because of my enthusiasm. I said, I'm going to apply and get a license. So these events that now are done all around the world, and the distinction is between TED, the parent company, and the TEDx events that are licensed, free licensing all around the world. And historically, that didn't exist in the beginning. So let's make sure, because even in our session, and I think it's cute because people know that, something is capital and something is small. So the letters TED, we didn't get it quite right on our session here. The TED is capital, the little x is small. The TED represents technology, entertainment, and design, and the X means it's independently organized. As a TEDx organizer, I must always have the X next to anything that I promote. And then the way they license it is you put your city's name right next to that without any spaces. But where did these events come from and how did they get started? So I'm just going to review quickly the history, and then I'm going to offer you some tips on how to deliver an amazing, memorable talk. And as far as history, it's so interesting to me that back in 1982, this architect named Richard Saul was doing a lot of traveling. And he recognized as he sat on these flights with different individuals that they were mostly either in technology, entertainment, and design. And that there was this convergence and intersectionality between these 3 topics. And that's how he came up with the idea. It took him 2 years to actually cook up his idea and plan it. So in 1984, so that's a good date to remember, the very first TED event was launched. And it was eclectic from the beginning. That is where Steve Jobs, basically released the Mac. It was, they had famous singers there. The guy had to leave the event early to go get his Emmy. There was the AOL at the time, America Online. They released what we knew as a CD. Back then it was a big shiny circular thing that people didn't understand at the time. So it was great from the beginning. However, he thought of it as a one-time event. And he said publicly, I will never do this again. And the reason he was saying that is because he didn't feel that he was able to get the audience that he wanted and had to discount his seats and get the students. In any case, it would be 6 years later that someone else ran into him and said, you really need to do that again. So think about, if that conversation and that reconsideration did not happen, we wouldn't have the platform that we all love and that has had just amazing success, for, several decades now. So that is the quick history of TED. And in terms of, distinguishing a difference, especially with all of us being Toastmasters, I wanted to just make sure that we had a few little understanding that, because sometimes people will tell a TEDx speaker, I liked your speech. And it's not a speech. You are delivering a talk. In Toastmasters, we give a speech. So there is a distinction between a talk and it's the style versus what we're trained to do in Toastmasters. So even when it comes to time, and initially, when he first launched this, he felt that 18 minutes was just long enough for an idea to get shared. And, beyond 18, it could be too long and you would lose your audience and even our attention span. And truly now, like the sweet spot is closer to 12 to 14 minutes. And then, when it comes to our speeches, back to the Toastmaster reference, we're usually doing 5 to 7 minute speeches. Another distinction is with TED, and this is the thing, like if you're going to take anything away, take this point. It's about one idea, one central theme. Your idea needs to run through your talk. You can have stories and you can have anecdotes and you can have facts, but make sure at the end, what's your central idea? And then when it comes to our Toastmaster speeches, very often, you can have 3, 4, 5 points that you're really making. But that's again a very important distinction. And then when it comes to style, for us at the TED and the TED format, it really needs to be more conversational. And even if think about this, especially as Toastmasters, how many events have you attended where the person is introduced and you tell them their name, you say the introducer is actually saying their name and they're saying a little bit about them. And then the speaker begins with, hello, my name is Manal Fakhoury. And I'm happy to be here. Well, we just told you my name. So what we would do at TED, which we train our speakers not to do that, but if you had done that, we would cut that part out before it actually even gets recorded and sent to TED. So those are the distinctions, especially I wanted to point out in terms of Toastmasters versus the TED platform. The other thing that I think that's important for us to hang on to and learn is, what makes a great TED Talk? And if you can remember this acronym and keep it with you, that you want your talk, and beyond TED, if you're a professional speaker, which this platform is not for professional speakers, is be memorable. Figure out, is my talk memorable? And what is it that I can perhaps interject to make it memorable? Is it a prop? Is it a story? Is it a question that I ask? Is it a refrain, a foundational phrase that I include in my talk, but is it memorable? Secondly, is it emotional? Is it John Maxwell that says everybody speaks, few connect? So do you actually evoke emotions? I can tell you there have been speakers when they're speaking, like I feel that quiver in my heart. And that's beautiful. So again, is it memorable? Is it emotional? And then is it novel? The brain is saying, tell me something new. Okay, because we know that the brain does not pay attention to boring things. So you need to have, and sometimes it's even your word choice, your word selection. If you use a different word, I remember one time when I used the word jazzed in a speech. And so this is not in a talk, but in a speech. And somebody said, I loved when you said that word jazz. It's almost like it lit up. And it's true, as you now even further, moving forward, think about speakers that you are listening to. And sometimes you'll hear a certain word, and that word will have that energy that it will, lighten up inside of you. So the other thing I want to make sure that we all understand is that with TED, that they are not every single event is the same. So if you are someone in the audience that's interested in speaking at an event, there's different types of events. I know for us at TEDx Ocala from the first year, we said that we were committed to making it, one of the most influential and best events globally. So we're always asking ourselves, how can we make it better? It's not wash and rinse and repeat like you hear people saying. No, it's really about delivering a great experience for the speaker, for the audience, for the volunteers, for everyone. So that's how we want to run our event. And if you're interested, you want to be looking at least 6 months ahead. So if you visit TED.com and you go to the States, you can see that events, on average, there's 11 events happening somewhere around the world. Now, the other thing that I would say is, what is the formula for a great TED Talk? Trick question. There is no one formula. There are some tips on how to make it better. So I'm going to go through some of these tips. And the first one I'm going to say is, again, focusing on that single idea. And let that be the guiding light that you present. So for example, our theme for 2023 is acceleration. That's the theme. Then the topic, you might say to me, Manal, my topic is about prison reform. Okay, great. Prison reform. That's a huge topic. What are we doing with prison reform? What is the idea? So you might say to me, my idea is that we keep talking about the recidivism rate, but we're not highlighting and amplifying all the success that happens with these former inmates. We're not giving that story any attention. I want to brighten, enlighten, and highlight that topic. So now we've got the idea, and then we move into developing the talk. But throughout, if you're including, so the first one is focusing on the single idea. Then secondly, without a doubt, I think 100% everyone knows the value and the power of storytelling. You want to share a story. And when you share a story, make sure that you are uncovering and sharing what is the meaning of the story that you just shared with us? How does it connect? What's the lesson in it that connects with your main idea? So make sure that you're actually unwrapping that and giving it to us. Whether it's a lesson or a message, make sure your story is clear. The third thing I would say is, do not give a lecture, because lectures are known to be boring. And that's not our format at TED. And something that's interesting, and I think what we say when it comes to a lecture, you actually begin to sound, like and that's sometimes where speakers will start to present many, many slides, and it starts to take on that feeling of a lecture. So we try to caution our speakers not to have an excess of slides, and sometimes they don't even need the slides. So slides are not necessary. They're not obligatory. And some of the very best talks have 0 slides in them. So don't give a lecture. Do not focus on an issue. There are many different types of TED Talks, but the issue talk, you have to be careful, because when you are focused on an issue, you're basically saying, isn't that terrible? You're creating some awareness. Generally, it's not motivational. And what you want to be careful with is that an idea is more, isn't that interesting? What can I do to help move this idea forward? And we have a saying that ideas that spread win. So make sure that you're framing your talk either as a challenge, as a proposal, or as a solution. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to mention is, and keep in mind that ultimately the talk itself should be inspiring action. Next, I would say is, make sure that your idea, your core idea, is not vague. And we've done this as we start to work with our speakers in practice. And you've got to be open to feedback, because sometimes what we uncover is that there's really 2 ideas that are running in that talk. And the best talks are tight. They have that one idea. Any person in the audience can walk away and say, wow, I just learned how to X. So that would be an important thing, is making sure that your idea is not vague, and that it completely, that there's this core idea. Of course, now we're going to get to something that we all know, and it's well known in anything, that when we start speaking, is you want to start strong, and you want to be able to speak to your audience right away, because you know how it is about getting people's attention. You have those first few seconds, and very often this is why even sometimes it almost sounds like, I don't know how many talks you've seen, it almost sounds like you're entering into a story when you start listening to the talk, but it's so engaging that you're able to stay with the speaker. The next thing that I would say is, in terms of, starting strong, is making sure that the speaker, you as the speaker, have the passion. So if you are wanting to give a talk, make sure it's something that you really care about, something that you're passionate about. The first time I ever applied was back in 2017. And believe it or not, it was the deadline for TEDx Jacksonville. And what was really incredible, and they actually tell you, like, this is the type of thing that you need to spend some time. Like, it's not, you don't just like go through it. But for one reason or another, as I sat and read that application, it just flew right out of me. And it was about the opioid crisis. And I'm a pharmacist. And I felt that, unwittingly, I was actually part of the opioid crisis and in contributing to it. We pharmacists, the way we were even trained and how we were dispensing opioids. So that is the talk that I gave back in 2017. But 100% make sure that you live and breathe your message. And that will be really important. And people can see that. Also, the important thing when it comes back to storytelling is making sure that you are invoking emotion, that this is a human-to-human connection, and you want to uncover some humor. And the reason I'm really going to stress the point of humor, even if it's on a heavy topic, because we relax, our brain relaxes, we're willing to accept and listen to even when it is a heavy topic. Maybe the topic is about war. Maybe it's about, how is it that in 2023 that we still have these raging conflicts across the world? That's a heavy topic. But if you can find some way to lighten it up, it relaxes everyone and your brain relaxes and they're able to accept your information. Also, number 10 on my list, which I stopped numbering them, but I'm going to go back to numbering them, is be yourself. I think the audience senses when it's really you speaking versus, trying to be someone else. We each have our own different style. We can enhance our style. And that is why, a good TEDx event will give you a coach to help you, to be able to help you refine your talk and give you some feedback. And then when we go back to now, coming to closing our talk, of course, we always say start strong, even, close stronger, because that is what people will remember. It's almost as if you're taken off in a flight and then you want to have that great landing. So have a powerful call to action would be my recommendation. Make sure it's something that's realistic that they can actually do. So you don't want to end your talk, that is a really bad problem that we have, but what can we do about it? Offer your suggestion. Something else that you may want to keep in mind as where you're developing your talk is keeping in mind, and I teach our speakers, is that it is the idea that is the star. It's not the speaker. And we have been trained as TEDx organizers is when it comes to the idea versus the speaker, because you can have a dynamic speaker, but the idea is just flat. There isn't any real merit. It's not new. It's not, anything fresh. Go with the idea rather than the skill set of the speaker and work with the speaker. So once again, I would just say, make sure that, if this is in your future, that you are getting close by attending an event. And the very first event that I attended was TEDx Mile High, one of the best events in the country.
Now, so I noticed, because I've researched this a bit here in the Colorado area, that a lot of time when they do these TEDx's, they have a theme, like you said, or they may be very geocentric. Like, don't even think of coming here if you don't live in, Colorado Springs or something. So do they ever I just was curious if you get advice. Is it worth flying to some other town or looking at some other town across the country if you think that theme is just perfect?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say absolutely. And we have, for example, we're featuring 13 speakers this year. And of the 13, 4 are local, 1 is regional. So that's 5. So that leaves us with 8 out-of-state speakers.
Wow.
So people apply from all around the world. And we've had people come speak on our stage from Australia, from the Netherlands. So we've had from Palestine. We've had some international speakers.
So the key is to look for the theme.
It's not just the theme. The theme is important, but also I think certain events, here's something we didn't talk about, is whenever, even let's say you live in Tampa or Orlando or San Francisco, like big cities, the very first time they give the license, they cap it at 100 attendees. So it doesn't matter how large your city is. The very first, like a brand new license, when you get licensed, they'll say, and they put it in the subject line, so there's no error. Congratulations, you have been issued a license for 100 attendees. The only way to get that lifted, so that's like a level 1 license, is you have to attend their trainings. And it's funny, I went out to TED.com this morning before I was going to speak with all of you. And I noticed that they changed some of the pricing. So the pricing, I think, for like a discounted, highly discounted ticket to attend a TED, not TEDx, but the TED Talks is $6,500.
Well,
and then it's $12,000. It's $25,000. And then they have like a corporate one. It used to be published. It was $100,000, but it was a 5-year ticket. So that is TED. And I guess I didn't go enough in the history of that. It wasn't until 2001, Chris Anderson took over. So remember, 1984 was the first event. It took 6 more years. So 1990 is the second event, and it starts becoming an annual event. And it was not until 2006 that they actually featured a few online. And then they realized that people wanted to share this with their families. So you had to physically attend TED to, witness these talks. 2006, it went crazy when they started sharing them. They only shared like 6 talks and had millions of views. And then they had to make a really hard decision. They actually flipped the company. They went from an events company to a media company. And that is where the licensing of the TEDx in 2009, they started to license them.